Hey guys, welcome to What the Tech. And today I have a little unknown brand, a low-key phone, the Oukitel U18. So what I mean by an unknown brand, I'm talking about in North America, like the States or Canada. If you're in the Asian market, you probably already know about Oukitel and its U line of phones. Now this little guy came all the way from China, so it took a while just to wait for it. And I spent my time around a week and a half testing it just to see how well it does. It's a budget phone, so it's never really meant to compete toe-to-toe with the flagships out there. But since it directly compares itself to the iPhone X on the website, and the fact that they ran an initial launch campaign of reduced pricing up to the first 1,000 phones, I think it's fine to compare those two every now and then. Currently, Amazon has the phone listed for around $200. It comes with a MediaTek 6750T octa-core processor at 1.5 GHz and a Mulle T860 GPU, 4 gigs of RAM, and 64 gigs of storage, with 64 gigs expandable via TF card. Oh, also it has a dual SIM, which is popular and actually pretty much standard for Asian markets. The phone isn't really that snappy, but it isn't slow. If anything, it's probably hesitant. So design-wise, the phone is pretty thick. You can feel the heft in it, and it's a bit heavier than the iPhone X at 213 grams compared to the maybe I think 190 something grams for the iPhone. And the back is polycarbonate with a metal zinc alloy side. So it has that metal railing on the side. And that metal on the side gives it the feeling of being a premium phone. There are ridged lines and edges running across the upper portion of the phone across the camera. It gives it a very Huawei Mate Pro 10 kind of feel and pretty much a copy of it from the back, I think. Unfortunately, this is an aspect of the phone that I think when they made it, they didn't expect, especially with the metal sides, but this part of the phone and this back side, it gets really hot. I mean, after prolonged usage, the metal could actually hurt on the touch. When you push it against someone's skin, it hurts. So the front glass panel, the display, curves into the phone itself. It gives it a pretty nice seamless feel, and you wouldn't notice any cheap features on the phone at all. The design is pretty good. The button placement is pretty smart. You got your volume rockers on one side, your power button. Pretty much industry standard at this point, have it on the same side. One thing that's kind of disappointing though, is how mushy the buttons are. After the first couple of hours, I've noticed that this thing really does feel like a sponge. So the speakers, or I mean one speaker, the one speaker is pretty decent on this phone. It's not enough to fill a large room, but you can probably fill like a small bedroom or your restroom while you're using it to hear your video, or perhaps a podcast while you're trying to do your things or chores. Again, it's just one single firing down, but at this price point, you really can't complain that much. Anything that plays is pretty much good. Sound quality, not the greatest, but again, it's cheap, so what do you expect? Speaking of the speaker area, if you look down here, it has a Usbc port, and nowhere on the phone is there a headphone jack. Because it's 2018, they ship you with a USB-C to 3.5mm. I kind of don't get why they shipped this phone only with a USB-C port, especially at this price range, but we'll explore more into that later. Now let's get back to admiring the front of this phone. Now would you look at that display? I like it, I mean a lot. No front buttons or capacitive ones on the front. That portion, that chin, is probably taken up by the display controller, and unlike what Apple does by tucking it underneath on their iPhone X, they can't really do it in this price point because that's really expensive to do. I think they were able to sell that this is a very premium looking phone without making people think that you spent only 200 bucks on it. There's a fingerprint scanner in the back, and it's a pretty good one. I mean, really good. About as fast as Touch ID 2 on the newer iPhones and on the MacBook Pro. It's actually not a button, so it just takes a tap while the phone's off and it will turn it on. Just like that, no clicking or anything. So yeah, with that, the fingerprint scanner is rock solid, and I'd recommend it as your main way to unlock this phone if you wanted to buy it. I had to double check to make sure because it does come with a screen protector pre-installed out of the box. Alright, so for those of you who noticed by now, and this came to shock to me, this phone is a fully laminated IPS display. I had to double check because there is a screen protector pre-installed out of the box. And yeah, this is fully laminated. That's why the colors pop so well. And that display, it really does a gorgeous job in filling up the phone and around the notch's ear. Android stock apps, they do a beautiful job in filling up the entire display. So here you have Google Now's launcher. And one of my favorite things to do that I actually did for fun is just to go in Google Maps. Man, just look at that. Beautiful. Look how it takes up the entire screen. It makes any other phone look extremely dated. This is Vancouver. I mean, this phone really does look more expensive than it is, and I think that's a great selling point. If you were to compare these phones side by side with like an iPhone 8 or lower, it would make the other more expensive iPhone look extremely dated. So this phone has a very nice tall display with a ratio of 21:9, which is actually taller compared to the rest of the market. The iPhone X has a 19.5:9, I think, and the S9 has something very similar, maybe 19:9. With that tall display, content consumption is really awesome. Look, see how the top of the notch matches the color theme of the actual website? This super tall display is also very nice for your infinite scrolling apps like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or Tumblr. So for day-to-day usage, I say this phone is pretty fine. It's really good. So the processor and RAM it comes with doesn't really make this a power horse, but if you're just using for web surfing, for checking your emails, and for streaming videos here and there, this phone would do you pretty well. It's once you do more intensive things like playing games or binging on Netflix, YouTube for too long, where you do notice this phone does get hot. And like I said earlier, it does hesitate here and there from switching between big applications. Battery life is really good. I mean, really good. This phone packs a 4,000 milliamp hour battery inside of it, and it can last all day at normal usage. Sometimes even a day and a half or two if you forget about it. For me, when I tried pushing it with extreme loads, I was able to get maybe a day, but I still ended on around 20 to 25% at the end of my day. Of course, personally, I'd probably trade off a couple hundred milliamp hours if I could get a headphone jack on the bottom of this phone. Now, I really didn't want to talk about this part, but I have to talk about it. They advertise it pretty heavily on their website, the Face ID unlock, or their face unlock, and quite frankly, it sucks. So how the U18 does face unlock is it compares a 2D image to your face and whatever it scanned upon setting up. And this is one of those old techniques that are pretty easy to fool. If you just put a printed picture of yourself, then it will probably unlock. And one of the things that makes it more inconvenient is that any amount of direct sunlight throws it off. Any off angle throws it off. My glasses being on or off throws it off. And also, even my hair down throws it off. So I don't really recommend it, especially since the fingerprint reader on the back of this phone is so good. Face ID on this phone is a gimmicky one, so I'd probably just call it a fake feature. So this could be a design failure or a quirk, depending how you see it, but the USB-C port on this phone is something I noticed. It's pretty deep. And here's the charger that it came with. Snaps on pretty easily, right? But here's my MacBook Pro charger. Yeah, so the actual cable itself runs a little longer than it should, so it's pretty recessed in here. Basically, if you lose the charger that the manufacturer gives you, you're kind of screwed. And if you lose your dongle, forget about it. No more audio for you. I decided to talk about the camera last because, well, it just sucks. There's a 13 megapixel and 5 megapixel dual shooter on the back. I can't really tell if it helps the image at all, but what it does do is it gives you a better ×2 zoom or whatever you're looking at. The blur effect isn't that great. You're pretty much better off just taking a regular shot, and there's a noticeable shutter delay on both front and back shooters. Also, there's a beauty mode where I have to say I do look quite beautiful in. It's called Face Beauty. It pretty much just softens up the picture. I mean, it softens it by a lot and brightens things up. In case you're concerned, this phone can definitely still take pictures of homework, so you can copy it later. So that still stands. So yeah, this bad boy is the Oukitel U18. If you squint hard enough, it looks like an iPhone X, but if you get it, you're pretty much just trying to be a poser at this point. But it's okay, Oukitel knows. That's why they're very unapologetic in how much they copy the iPhone X. Like I said earlier, it's a budget phone, so you can't expect too much from it, but it does a great job of being a budget phone. If anything, it just confirms the consensus out there that cheaper phones are getting better faster than more expensive phones are getting better. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this was some people's first phones because of the great price point. So would I recommend this phone? Probably not. There are a couple great Android phones out there already. They're going to be slightly more in price, around your $400 or $500 point, but you're going to pack a lot more processing power, and the phone and the interface would be a lot more snappier. But hey, it's great to look at. Thanks for watching What the Tech. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to give a thumbs up. And if you want to see more things like this, don't forget to sub. Share your thoughts on this beautiful notch down below. And I made a video in the past about the notch as well and how the notch is going to be like moving forward. So don't forget to check that out. Link in the description. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Peace.